David, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I got a quote for a custom flight from Medellin to Bahia Solano.
We'll split that with you if you need to get down here.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, hey, is that my play? And just like, so the plane's waiting on me? Yeah, once I sit down, I'm gonna see what magic I can make happen.
We really should have known better. I mean, I should have known better. Never, ever, ever put a trip on Mother's Day as a young dad. But as things happen, wires get crossed, calendars get mixed up, and you have to figure out with what you have. So in May of 2021, Kai and myself set out on a journey, trying to thread the needle between spending Mother's Day with our families and catching up with the production we were putting on in Colombia. Originally, it sounded like we had made a miracle happen. We'd rerouted our flights so that we could spend Mother's Day morning with our families and get to Colombia by that night. The idea was then we'd wake up in the morning, catch up with our buddies, miss only one day of fishing, and be no worse for the wear. But there was a problem. Our original flight from Birmingham to Miami got delayed. Normally, you would just say, oh, well, we'll just get on the next flight. But this set off a cascade of events that really spiked our blood pressure. For one, we now missed our way to get into Colombia that night, which again is a mild travel inconvenience. But it was 2021. We had taken COVID tests right before our flights to ensure we were within the 48-hour test window for Colombia's regulations. With another flight delay, we were running the risk of being outside that window. Legitimately, we would show up in Colombia with expired COVID tests and be asked to fly all the way back home to America. So, needless to say, we were a little stressed. Might have tried to start taking matters into our own hands a little aggressively.
Dude, I forgot all
What
my
kind of beer did you get, Kai?
only the finest
Go ahead and
box Chardonnay.
And that's where American Airlines again tested our wits. With that flight delay, we missed another connection into Colombia. The only way we could find a way forward was to fly into a different town in Colombia. Basically, reroute our flights into Bogota, which is the capital of Colombia, just so that we could get our passport stamped before our COVID test expired. It was a crazy freaking plan, but it was the only one that we could think of actually working. So after we touched down in Miami, we got a rental car and drove to Fort Lauderdale to make sure we'd be on a JetBlue flight that would get us into Bogota the next morning before those tests expired. Kai, what are we doing here?
We are delivering our own baggages between airports when they lost our shit. They didn't even lose our shit. They were like, sorry, we know where it is. You just aren't going to be able to get it. I said, that's great. Can you please hold the door for 30 extra seconds? So now we're on an adventure.
All respect, they stayed until it closed down. There was another problem. The area of Colombia we were fishing in, Bahia Solano, is not connected by commercial airlines. It literally is not serviced by roads. It is only serviced by flights and boats. And since we had now changed to Bogota, I realized that we had a massive problem.
Hey Ben.
Yeah.
Luisa thinks the Pacifica at 140 is probably full.
And so that's the plan we struck. The lodge owner knew a pilot who would fly us from Medellin to Bahia Solano for a relatively inexpensive fare. So originally it sounded like we were going to jump on one of the big passenger planes that jumps from Medellin to Bahia Solano and just have a lot of legroom to ourselves. This kind of made sense in our heads because all of the cargo, all of the groceries, all of that stuff either arrives by boat or by plane, so we thought we were just shacking up on one of those planes. The next morning we ran, and we ran, and we ran, and we ran. Started with a 5 a.m. flight from Fort Lauderdale to Bogota. We ran to customs where we awaited our fate, literally spending an hour arguing with the customs agent on when we took our COVID test and why they still had an hour on the clock. And then we were late for our Bogota to Medellin flight, so we ran again. We ran again, until we found ourselves on the tarmac in Medellin, ready to go catch up with our buddies. But there was a surprise. Yeah, it wasn't a passenger jet. It wasn't even a passenger propeller plane. It was a tiny little Cessna that I'm pretty sure was older than I am. I looked at the pilot and made an assessment. The dude was carrying an iPad, repping an Apple Watch, had a lot of swagger about him, and I'll be honest, as someone who has flight anxiety, there's nothing I love more than a cocky pilot. So when he said, "Listos?" I said, "Okay, man, let's do this." And so there we were in a tiny little propeller plane in front of all these other passenger jets, and we took off. 1 lap, 2 lap, 3 lap over the Medellin airspace trying to climb altitude because Medellin sits in a valley below 2 8,000-foot mountains. Now, I'd love to say that this was a peaceful moment where I was able to throw all my worries out the window and enjoy the beautiful view, which that's what Kai does. He has narcolepsy. He was conked out in the back. But no, there was a thunderstorm right above the rainforest. And I remember looking at the pilot's countdown, 50 miles to go, 40 miles to go, 30 miles to go. And I'm just white knuckling my seat. As we approach the thunderstorm, he pulls the Cessna up, and sure enough, boom, downdraft comes up. We careen up, careen down, and yes, Kai's still asleep. And at that moment, when I was honestly freaking out, I realized there was something beautiful about this little plane. It would not chop through the wind. It would not fight it like a passenger jet for turbulence. It would just kind of ride the air like a butterfly. And probably in one of the more holistic moments of me and my flight anxiety, I just let go and watched as our little plane gently floated up, drifted down, floated up, drifted down, looked over at the pilot. He was in control. And then as soon as we were through the clouds, boom, the Pacific Ocean. We were there. Touchdown. Kai looks around confused as hell. Where are we? Said we made it. And as sleep deprived and as stressed and everything else had going through my head, believe it or not, I was not thinking about a rum drink or a beer. I was thinking about, what was the fishing like? Did we make it in time? And it's actually really rare that this happens in our stories. But the next morning, we woke up to a dream come true. Colombia put on a show that welcomed Kai and I to the coast. Launching out of the lodge, we were greeted by wonderful sea conditions. Not a lot of waves, beautiful sunlight, and immediately as we took a left into the current, we noticed dolphins, spinner dolphins to be exact, jumping everywhere. These are the craziest things I've ever seen. They would jump 10 feet out of the air, twisting like a ballerina and then smacking down on the water. The thing was crazy is that they and Tuna were having a joint party together. They were both crashing in on sardines and circling them in together. We just kind of got to watch this beautiful National Geographic style moment as dolphin and tuna worked bait together. I'd love to sit there and say that I put down my fishing rod and just watched. I couldn't. I picked up a spin rod and immediately hooked up with tuna.
Whoa, is he coming? I wasn't ready.
A tune? Double hookup!
Same size. Step down.
We in tonight, boys.
Oh! What happened? Oh, it's fun! I mean, you can hear it in my voice. Notching that first tuna was such a big deal, such a relief for all the chaos that Kai and I had gone through. And what was crazy is that it kept on getting better. So while we caught a couple of tuna on the popper originally,
Oh!
oh no! Oh yeah! Let's go! George picks up a fly rod and sticks a really good Colombian tuna and puts basically the pedal to the metal with a 12 weight, which tuna laugh at. And as he worked and worked and worked and worked, we landed our first tuna on the fly on the trip. Woo! Yeah. Ha! And what's wild is that for the rest of the trip, we got to see more of Colombia that just enraptured us. I mean, we saw sailfish, we saw more tuna, we even saw a tarpon. Oh my God! That was I got
Tuck her out.
and then Kai. Well, Kai did what he always does.
Oh, grande.
Is anybody ready?
Yeah. Oh, hey. Gills, yes, gills.
Yeah! Yes, dude! Woo! That's a fucking tank! Woo!
Get it? Dude, that's a toad!
And we all just enjoyed one of the most wonderful spots on Earth with some of the most wonderful people on Earth. And so as wild as that travel day was, and as much as I would love to avoid it for the rest of my life, I can't help but say it was worth it.